Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today I will offer an update on the case of Collin Griffith. I have covered a lot of surprising verdicts in my time. It's hard to imagine a verdict more confusing and irrational than this one. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the incident, then offer my analysis. Collin Griffith was born sometime around 2007 and was raised in Lincoln County, Oklahoma. He lived with his father, Charles, his mother, Catherine, who went by the name Kathy, and his older brother, Christopher, in a house on East 900 Road in the small town of Stroud. This is about an hour southeast of Tulsa. After being married for 20 years, Collin's parents divorced in May 2020. This started an acrimonious custody battle. Kathy moved to Port Charlotte, Florida, where she worked as an online schoolteacher. Port Charlotte is about 45 minutes north of Fort Myers. Collin remained in Oklahoma and continued to live with his father, Charles. In August 2022, Kathy went to court to get sole custody of Collin. She made several accusations against Charles. For example, he had not permitted her to have any contact with Collin since December 2019, when Collin begged his mother to come and get him. Kathy claimed that Collin was gay, and he told his father this. In response, Charles would not let Collin out of the house even to attend school. Charles told Collin negative things about Kathy. He was looking at Kathy's social media posts and trying to find anything which could make her look bad to Collin. Kathy stated that she had developed post-traumatic stress disorder from being harassed and stalked by Charles. Kathy wanted Collin to receive mental health counseling and was worried that he had already suffered irreparable emotional harm due to his father's parental alienation campaign. Charles disagreed with Kathy's assessment of the situation. He said that in May of 2020, Kathy texted an image of a note to Collin. This note suggested that Kathy was going to bring harm to herself. On February 14, 2023, Collin Griffith called 911. When the police arrived at his house, they found Charles dead from one gunshot wound to the head and one to the chest. Collin, who was 15 years old at this time, explained that his 43-year-old father, Charles, had threatened him with a knife and cornered him in a room. Acting in self-defense, Collin retrieved a firearm and shot his father twice. At this point, Collin invoked his right to remain silent. He was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. The police believed the evidence at the scene of the shooting did not match the story provided by Collin. He was released on $50,000 bail, which was posted by his mother, Kathy. After investigating for less than a month, the police were not able to disprove Collin's version of events. The first-degree murder charge was dismissed, and Collin moved to Port Charlotte, Florida, to live with his mother, Kathy. It would appear as though Kathy finally obtained exactly what she was looking for, although maybe she should have reconsidered her goals. Now moving to the timeline of the incident. In September 2023, about 7 months after Collin shot his father, Charles, to death, he told staff at his school that his mother pulled a gun on him during an argument. He said that Kathy threatened to bring an end to both their lives. When the police spoke to Kathy, she denied Collin's accusation and explained how Collin was simply angry with her. She had taken away his phone and AirPods because his performance in school was not satisfactory. Kathy believed that due to the alleged mistreatment delivered by Charles, Collin had developed post-traumatic stress disorder and a personality disorder. So Kathy was still blaming Charles for the problems that Collin had. The police transported Collin to a mental health facility under the Florida Mental Health Act, which is commonly referred to as the Baker Act. This allows for a person to be involuntarily evaluated for mental illness if the individual poses a serious threat to themselves or others. While in a secure facility, Collin threatened to murder his mother if he was returned to her, saying that he would throw her out of a vehicle and shoot or stab her. Collin said, quote, "I've done it before, to my dad. I know I can do it again," unquote. Due to this threat, Collin spent several months in a mental health facility in Jupiter, Florida. After being released, he returned to living with his mother, Kathy. Not surprisingly, Collin's behavior did not improve. In November 2023, he became angry after his mother restricted his use of video games. He reacted by knocking her to the ground and stomping on her. When confronted by the police, Collin claimed that he acted in self-defense. Collin's grandmother witnessed the attack on Kathy and refuted his claim. As a result, Collin was arrested and charged with domestic violence battery. As this was happening, Collin told the police and his grandmother that he did not want to be returned to his mother's custody. He said, quote, "I'm in a constant state of fight or flight. If I think she's going to do something, even if she's not, I might act. I'm not going to, go crazy or anything, but I'm not sure, honestly," unquote. On February 12, 2024, Collin left Kathy's house and drove 2 hours north to his grandmother's mobile home on Hewlett Drive in Auburndale, Florida. His grandmother was not home at the time. The police took Collin into custody and turned him over to the Division of Children and Family Services. He said that if he was returned to his mother's custody, he would kill her. DCF kept Collin in custody for 2 weeks. In March 2024, he was reunited with his mother. In May 2024, Collin graduated from an alternative high school and enrolled in a community college. Based on Kathy's Instagram posts, it appears as though she rewarded Collin by purchasing him a new Volkswagen sedan. In early July 2024, Kathy and her son Collin visited Washington, D.C. They stopped by several tourist attractions and historical landmarks. Despite Kathy's efforts to pacify Collin, he continued to be unhappy with her parenting tactics. On September 6, 2024, Collin once again left Port Charlotte and drove to his grandmother's mobile home in Auburndale. Just like the prior occasion when he drove there, his grandmother was not home at this time. 2 days later, on Sunday, September 8, Kathy drove to Auburndale to pick up Collin. At 6:14 p.m., Collin called 911 and said that he and his mother had been in a very long fight. During the course of this altercation, Kathy had fallen onto a knife and sustained a neck injury. When the police arrived, they encountered Collin standing outside, covered in blood. He calmly stated, "I know my rights. I want an attorney." Inside the house, the police found 39-year-old Kathy dead from a single stab wound. The weapon that killed her was a kitchen knife, which had gone all the way through her neck. Collin Griffith was arrested for first-degree murder and kidnapping and was tried as an adult. The jury was aware that Collin had shot and killed somebody while living in Oklahoma, but they did not know this person was his father, Charles. On February 5, 2025, Collin Griffith was found not guilty on both charges. Now moving to my analysis. The not guilty verdicts on the charges of first-degree murder and kidnapping have left many people shocked and confused. In addition to the first-degree murder charge, the jury also considered the lesser charges of second-degree murder and manslaughter. In addition to the kidnapping charge, they considered the lesser charge of false imprisonment. Even with all these options, they still decided to acquit Collin. Many people, including the state, disagree with the jury and believe that Collin was guilty. After the verdict, the sheriff of Polk County said, quote, "Our detectives firmly believe that Collin Griffith murdered his mother. The jury determined that they could not convict him beyond and to the exclusion of all reasonable doubt. During our investigation, detectives found witnesses that believe he also murdered his father in Oklahoma. That investigation is ongoing," unquote. This brings me to the question, was Collin guilty of murder in reality, despite the jury's finding? Let's take a look at the evidence both for and against the idea that he was guilty, starting with the inculpatory factors. On a few occasions, Collin told people that he wanted to kill his mother. At one point, he called her an evil blank. The blank rhymes with the word pitch. He made statements indicating that he wanted to push his mother out of a car, stab her, and shoot her. The police indicated that Collin was pleased with his mother when she took him on cruises, purchased him Starbucks, video games, and a cell phone, but he would get furious when she asked him to complete chores, like taking out the trash. There is this sense that Collin was a spoiled brat who was only interested in getting what he wanted. Collin's grandfather, Robert, testified that Collin was tired of his mother. Robert said that Collin told him he wanted to slit Kathy's throat and watch the life and blood leave her body. On the day of Kathy's death, September 8, 2024, Kathy arrived at her mother's mobile home where Collin was. Her objective was to get Collin and return to her residence. Witnesses saw Collin pulling his mother's hair at about 5 p.m. Kathy said, "You're hurting me, let go." Collin pulled his mother into his grandmother's home. The 911 call was not placed until 6:14 p.m. During this call, Collin claimed that his mother fell on a knife. Experts determined this is not what happened. The knife had gone all the way through Kathy's neck and come out the other side. Someone pushed the knife through her. The police did not find any defensive wounds on Collin's hands. Now moving to the exculpatory factors. Kathy's mother, Susan, who was Collin's grandmother, testified on Collin's behalf. She made a number of statements which made Kathy look like an undesirable, unstable, and aggressive individual. For example, in January 2024, Collin stayed with Susan for weeks, and Kathy did not remember where Collin was. Kathy had tried to bring an end to her own life. Kathy would sometimes cut off family members. Kathy was a liar. Kathy was violent and beat Collin with a belt, made him do push-ups, and held a weight over his head while he ran in place. On one occasion, Kathy handed Collin a gun and told him to kill her. In addition to the statements made by Susan, there was other evidence supporting the idea that Kathy was unpredictable, erratic, and flew into rages. On at least one occasion, Collin told the police that he would rather be in foster care, a mental health facility, or in jail than be with his mother, Kathy. On the day Kathy died, she was in her mother's mobile home for over an hour before Collin called 911. She had her phone with her. If Kathy had really been dragged into the home against her will, why didn't she call for help? Why didn't the two witnesses who saw Collin grab Kathy's hair call the police? The interior of the mobile home was not as disturbed as it should have been if there had been an extended altercation. Maybe Kathy was in the home of her own volition. Nobody knows what happened inside the home. Perhaps Kathy was the aggressor and attacked Collin with the knife. He was able to get the knife from Kathy and defend himself. The defense even went so far as to suggest that Kathy wanted to die and attacked Collin with the knife, knowing he would get the upper hand and kill her. Collin was charged with first-degree murder, but Kathy traveled to his location. This makes it seem like Collin did not plan the murder in advance. It is reasonable to believe that if he did commit murder, it was second-degree, not first-degree. When considering all the evidence in this case, do I think that Collin Griffith was guilty of first-degree murder and kidnapping? In my opinion, he was guilty of second-degree murder. The state reached too far by charging him with first-degree murder. I am not convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that Collin was guilty of kidnapping. There is just not enough evidence to support that charge. The elements that really hurt Collin's case were his repeated statements about wanting to kill his mother and his lie about her falling on the knife. The only reason he would have made up this unbelievable knife story is because he stabbed Kathy to death and was looking for some way to escape responsibility. What do I think happened in this case? Why did the jury find Collin not guilty? This is just a theory, my opinion. The testimony of Collin's grandmother, Susan, was very convincing to the jury. Usually, a mother testifying about her daughter being murdered would say nice things about the daughter. When Susan sided with Collin, it made a strong impression on the jury. How terrible was Kathy that Susan would testify in this way? The jury came to view Kathy as dangerous, aggressive, violent, and irritable. Kathy pushed Collin too far. She was responsible for some, if not all, his bad behavior. For some reason, the jury believed everything that Collin's defense attorney said during closing arguments. They believed every single theory the attorney put forward, even those that were unreasonable. I think they were particularly influenced by this idea that there was no way to know what happened in that mobile home. Collin could have been the aggressor, or Kathy could have been the aggressor. There is no way to figure out who was responsible because they were both terrible people. Amazingly, the jury gave Collin a pass regarding his lie about his mother falling on the knife. They believed his defense attorney's assertion that Collin only made up this story because he knew the police would think he was guilty. In my opinion, justice was not served in this case. As I mentioned, I believe Collin was guilty of second-degree murder in connection with his mother's death. Perhaps law enforcement will pursue murder charges again related to the shooting death of Collin's father, Charles, although this seems unlikely. They have had a lot of time to investigate and file charges if they were able to do this. It appears as though Collin has managed to escape responsibility. Here we have an individual who killed both his parents and created enough doubt around self-defense to avoid being convicted in each case. It is reasonable to believe that Collin is not a safe person to be around. Prior to the trial, the sheriff of Polk County stated that he believed Collin was a psychopath. Antisocial traits will not go away simply due to an acquittal. It's terrifying to imagine that Collin will walk around completely free. Society is powerless to stop him. They can only wait for the next incident. Now moving to my final thoughts. I believe that Kathy was a murder victim in this case, but she certainly made mistakes which contributed to her death. It appears as though Kathy was so fixated on her hatred of Charles that she sided with her violent and unstable son against him. Everything that was wrong with Collin made Kathy feel more confident in her claims against Charles. In a sense, Collin's misbehavior was proof that Kathy was right about Charles all along. Kathy recognized that Collin was dangerous, but believed that she was somehow immune. He would never target her. Charles may have died at Collin's hands, but that would never happen to Kathy. Ultimately, Kathy focused on the wrong enemy. For Susan's sake, one can only hope she did not make the same error as her daughter. Those are my thoughts on the case of Collin Griffith. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon.